Hey everybody, so you want to build a solar generator, right? All right, cool. Let's talk about the parts. You need an inverter, solar charge controller, AC power supply for charging it from the wall. You'll probably put a big power switch on it. You'll probably have some bus bars in there somewhere. And you need wire. Lots and lots and lots of wire. Big gauge. This is a number 4. And crimp terminals. You'll probably have a circuit breaker and a fuse block. So there's a lot of parts involved. Not just parts, but also a lot of wiring. So people really don't think about all of the extra stuff. Bluetooth shunt, battery level meter. So there's a whole bunch of components if you want to build one of these power stations. Or you can use one of these. This is the LiTime 24-volt all-in-one solar inverter charger. So all the pieces you just saw on the table, this combines all together. You have an AC charger, an inverter, and an MPPT charge controller all in one box. Weighs about 45 pounds, so it's reasonable. I can pick it up and move it. We've got mounting tabs here on the top and on the bottom. I've been waiting to get my hands on this thing since I saw it on their website. It just arrived yesterday and I can't wait to plug this thing in. Specs, as I mentioned, it is a 3,000 watt inverter with a 9,000 watt surge. It's based on a 24 volt battery setup. PV input is rated up to 1,600 watts. It'll do 30 to 105 volt solar input, max of 150. AC charger is rated up to 50 amps. So if you've got big batteries, which I do, you can charge them thing in just a couple of hours. It'll do lead acid, lithium, or user defined. So we've basically combined all those pieces I showed you earlier into one box. So let's take a look at the connections. Okay, starting from the left, master power switch, AC input breaker. We've got screw terminals for the AC input from the wall, AC output to go to your breaker panel or power strip or whatever, PV input. So we got range markings here, and then here's your battery connections. You take this little cover plate off and then get your screwdriver and we go down inside, and I'll show you the terminals in just a second. Off to the side, we've got data communications, and we also have dry contact, normally open, normally closed, to trigger an auto start generator. It is configurable and programmable to kick on and off whenever it is that you want. Here's the inside of the terminals. And the battery terminals. We also have an integrated fuse over here off to the side, which is nice. This is a 4-gauge wire that I was actually able to cram all the way inside here, but we've got a little accessory bag. So this is a pretty nice goodie bag. We've got wall mollies. We've got brackets for the bottom. We got a spare 150 amp fuse. We got these big ferrules. These are supposed to be for a 2-gauge. We'll try that out on the next build. So these go in here. We've got heat shrink tubing for the ferrules. We've got ferrules for the AC input, so you can stick heavy gauge wire into the AC in and out. We've got multicolored heat shrink tubing. They even gave me a set of MC4s, so not a bad little goodie bag. The build I'm about to do is going to be really quick and dirty. I'm going to use smaller wire and stuff like that because I'm waiting on some pieces to come in for my ultimate build. So don't give me too much grief about this. I just want to slap this thing up and plug it in and see what it does. I'm really excited to check it out. So let's put it on one of my dollies and plug it into some batteries and see what it's like. Let's go. All right, so the top bracket is offset, and we got these bottom brackets, so I'm just going to attach them here. Okay, so there's the bottom standoffs. Now let's mount it. I've got my 1/4x20 bolts here, and I've got my furniture dolly that I use for all of my testing with some plywood bolted to it. So let's make some mounting holes and get this thing hung up. Okay, we got it up. All right, we're all mounted. So the spacing on the top was a little weird. It's 16 centimeters. So I had to re-drill the holes a couple of times. It's 40, 45 pounds. So, you know, I was able to manage it, pick it up and get the bolts in myself. So now we're gonna connect the AC in, AC out, and connect my batteries. So don't be afraid of 24 volt. 24 volt is just two 12 volt batteries that are linked together, or companies are starting to come out with 24 volt batteries now. You can get 24 volt 100 amp or a 24 volt 200 amp. These are two 200 amp 12 volt batteries. So I have 12 volts at 200 amp hours, which is 5.1 kilowatt hours. So this is the same as those big rack mounts that people are buying, the same total power capacity. For the AC input, I'm just going to use this extension cord. This is really thin. This is like an 18 gauge. You really should use something bigger, which I will on the full build, but I just got to get this thing powered on and see what it does. So all you got to do is take this, cut it in half, strip back the wires, and connect to the terminals, and I'll show you how to do that. Well, in a very funny plot twist, I'm out of wire, so time to make a Home Depot run. And naturally, Home Depot was out of what I wanted, so I've got some 8 gauge and some ring terminals just so I can power this thing up and see how it works. All right, let's keep going. Funny little quirk, the positive terminal is over there and the negative is over here. And if you look at the orientation of my batteries, the negative is over here and the positive is over here. So my connections are actually going to be crossed. And while we're here, we're going to connect some MC4s for the panels and the AC inputs. Quirk number 2, the solar input terminals are pretty small, which is probably why it comes with those ferrules. I was not planning on using those, but I don't have much of a choice. Funny enough, I have a little ferrule kit that I've been meaning to test out. Well, that actually worked pretty well. Okay, we've got batteries and MC4s. Now we need to do the power. So as I mentioned, regular extension cord, cut it in half, strip off the outer jacket. And if you do it slowly, you get black, green, white on the inside. So there's my power output. Okay, now let's slide it back into place. Okay, so here it is. I know this is really ugly. Like I said, I just wanted to get something together. So I got my power connections. I've got my AC in, AC out over here. Got my MC4 for my solar. All right, so we're booted up. 110 volts. Okay, so the default settings were all okay. Let's plug a load into it. Got my $20 space heater. There we go. My little box fan draws so little power, it didn't really get the screen to kick on. Now that my space heater's on, I've got a load percentage. So I'm pulling 43% of the inverter's capacity because this thing's rated to 1,500 watts. So 3,000 watt inverter, 1,000 watts, I'm at 44% of the inverter's capacity. Easy enough. Let's plug in the AC charger. Okay, AC charger's plugged in. It does have UPS functionality, so it'll automatically switch over, you know, if the power cuts out. Okay, so we're all set up. This is just about as simple as it can get. I love that I can combine those three components together and all that wiring into one really simple box. You know, if you watch other videos, you see all the wiring and bus bars and things like that, and this piece consolidates that all together. So things that I like: 24 volts, which means that you can get away with using smaller wires from the battery up into the inverter. Now people will ask, well, what about an EG4 and go to 48 volts? My problem with the EG4, if you look really closely at the technical specs, is that it has a very high minimum input voltage. This thing from LiTime will work on a minimum of 30 volts, 30 to 100, which means you can buy really cheap used panels, residential panels off of Facebook that are a 37 volt output, and you could use just one of those panels to kick this thing on. Two obviously would be better, we get to 60 volts and with more current, but you could get away with just one. The EG4, you're going to have 4 or 5 to hit that minimum threshold. This is also only a 3,000 watt inverter, so I'm not going to run my entire house off of that, but you're on a prepper channel. For me, this is a preparedness thing. This is not a homesteading or off-grid item for my purposes. 3,000 watts is more than enough for me to run my refrigerator, my chest freezer, my electric blanket, and all like my fundamental essentials. So I can buy this inverter, a 24 volt battery, 100 or 200 amp hours, preferably 2 panels off of Craigslist or Facebook, and be ready to rock and roll. The best part about this thing is this inverter is under $500. Depending upon when you watch this video, right now they're on sale for like $430 something as part of Black Friday, but their list price is $450. So for under 500 bucks, 24 volt battery, another $500. So you can build this thing for well under $1,000 and have a really nice system with a lot of really cool capabilities that's very, very easy to build. So check out the links below for this item and my favorite batteries, and stay tuned because I'm going to do a big mega build, my dream build. I've just been waiting for this thing to come in, and yeah. Things that I don't like. I wish that the power terminals were larger. I'm lucky that I had that ferrule kit, so I could crimp down my power terminals or my power wires. I wish it would natively take larger gauge wire. Personal preference, I don't like using those ferrules, so I wish the wire connections were bigger. I also wish that the battery terminals were a little further apart. It also seems like there's a firmware update kind of pending, because some of the menu functions it talks about in the manual I couldn't get to. I don't know if I was doing something wrong, but I was arrowing up and I wasn't able to get to certain parts. But still, I mean, even as is, you saw all the parts and components that this thing replaces. So it's kind of hard for me to complain too much for, you know, under $450 to have a 3,000 watt inverter and a 60 amp MPPT charge controller and a 50 amp AC charger all in one piece. So I'm not going to gripe too much about little quirks in the firmware when I can consolidate all those things into one really simple build. So I hope that this was helpful and interesting, and check out the links below and hit like and subscribe and get ready for some new stuff coming soon. Thanks.